Check this out. What were 60,000 jellyfish doing in space? The backstroke? When and why was Niagara Falls dry? Where can you see a green sunset and a flowering desert? Let's dig into some of the Earth's mysteries. The Earth had a second moon. A space rock the size of a car had come up too close and had been tangled into our planet's gravitational pull for at least a year. In March 2020, it left Earth for the Sun's orbit. This was only the second confirmed mini-moon after the one spotted in 2006. In 1991, NASA sent to space around 2,500 jellyfish polyps in bags with artificial seawater. By the end of the mission, they had multiplied to 60,000 jellies. Scientists wanted to see if jellies born in space would be able to adapt to Earth's gravity after coming back. Sadly, they didn't do so well. Humans and jellyfish have similar gravity-sensing structures, so humans born during long future space missions could have some massive vertigo back on Earth too. In 1859, the biggest solar storm ever was recorded. It was so powerful, northern lights were spotted in Cuba and Honolulu, and southern lights were seen as far up as Santiago, Chile. In latitudes like that of New York, people were able to read newspapers in the dark under those northern lights alone. If something similar happened today, it would have cost the world about $1.2 trillion. Speaking of rare bright lights, have you ever spotted a green flash? It happens shortly after sunset or before sunrise when the sun is almost entirely below the horizon and the Earth's atmosphere bends and scatters lights from it. People mostly spot it over the ocean. It can also be yellow, blue, or purple. I've actually seen one myself. Lucky me. When Kawajian volcano in Indonesia erupts, it looks like it's spitting out bright blue and purple lava. In fact, the lava itself is normal. It's the sulfuric gas coming out of the magma chamber and burning that makes it look so surreal. For the same reason, the water in the crater lake seems bright blue and the shores electric yellow. Niagara Falls was once dry. In 1969, engineers turned off two of the three falls making up the landmark. They did it to remove the rocks that had piled up at the base of the falls. Over the first weekend of the renovation works alone, about 100,000 tourists visited the spot. In Racetrack Playa, California, rocks about as heavy as a horse are moving around on their own and leaving trails behind. There were different theories to explain this, from magnetic fields to aliens. Finally, a NASA scientist found out that in winter, rainwater in the playa freezes over. Rocks get encased in ice. When it starts to melt, even a light breeze is enough to move the boulders around. Once a year, for just a few moments, a waterfall in Yosemite National Park turns into a firefall. In winter and early spring, two streams flow down the granite El Capitan. In perfect conditions in February, when the sun is hiding behind the horizon, it gets in the right position to reflect off the wall and color the water fiery orange. The Danakil Depression in Ethiopia is a one-of-a-kind landscape with crackling pools of lava and neon hot springs and geysers. It's one of the hottest and lowest places on Earth that hardly receives any rainfall. Scientists studied this area to find out how life might evolve on other planets. Many of them call it the cradle of humanity. Some places on Earth have less gravity than others. Canada's Hudson Bay, for example, used to be covered by a super thick and heavy glacier during the last ice age. The ice had pushed tons of rock mass outward when it started to melt. The smaller the mass of an object, the less gravity it has. It'll take another 5,000 years for the Earth to return to its original shape in this spot. There are underwater lakes and rivers in the ocean. The water in them is denser and more saline than the rest of the ocean. They have shoreline, surfaces, and even waves. And smaller rivers also flow into larger ones. They can be found across the world, from the coasts of Greenland to the Bay of Bengal. One of the most unique natural optical illusions on Earth is an underwater waterfall off the coast of Mauritius. No worries, the island isn't going down the drain. Sand is moving through the underwater currents into the darker, deeper ocean and creates the illusion. The shelf here is 10 times deeper than the rest of the surrounding waters. There used to be a never-ending wave in Brazil. The Pororoca, which translates as Big Roar in the Amazon basin, went on for hours and was so powerful it could take down trees. Surfers from across the world came here in early spring to ride more than a half an hour in a row. The record was 6 miles non-stop on a single attempt. One of the driest places on Earth, Chile's Atacama Desert, turns into a garden every 5 to 7 years. With enough rainfall between September and November, superbloom spreads overnight. The seeds of over 200 types of flowers sleep in the ground for months or years, waiting for that water to help them sprout. Mineral gypsum sometimes crystallizes in a rose shape. It happens in dry, sandy areas that occasionally get flooded. The petals of desert roses are made of crystals that get mixed with grains of sand. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela is often called the lightning capital of the world. Thunderstorms happen here 300 days of the year, with a peak in September. Sometimes there are up to 200 flashes in a minute. It happens because cool air coming from the surrounding Andes meets with warm air from the Caribbean Sea and generates electricity. In 2010, spiders cocooned the trees and bushes in Pakistan. They did so to save themselves from a flood when 10 years' worth of rain poured down in a single week. Some of the webs even stretched over several trees. One of the rarest types of clouds are lenticular clouds that look like giant mountain hats. They're formed when moist air is traveling over a mountain or a mountain range and gets into an area of turbulence. They are so rare in flatland, people sometimes take them for unidentified flying objects. You can spot flowers in the Arctic Ocean in the midst of winter. These frost flowers are made of ice, in which microbes somehow manage to survive. Studying them could help scientists better understand how life formed on Earth. Lake Abraham in Canada looks like it's home to tens of thousands of jellyfish living under ice. In reality, they are frozen pockets of methane gas produced by bacteria that live in the lake. There is a cave in New Zealand that's lit by glowworms. Waitomo caves were discovered in late 19th century and have been popular with tourists ever since. There are thousands of bioluminescent larvae of various worm species in the caves. All of them are harmless. One of the oldest and largest organisms on Earth is a clonal grove nicknamed Pando in Utah. It looks like 47,000 trees, but in fact, it's one huge tree. It has 3 sets of chromosomes instead of 2, and can keep making unlimited new shoots from its own roots. Scientists believe it's at least 80,000 years old. Volcanoes can produce lightnings. They're formed in columns of volcanic ash through friction and static electricity to connect the positively and negatively charged particles. To understand how it works, you can rub a balloon across your hair or your feet across a carpet and then touch a metal doorknob. Yeah, go ahead. I'll wait. Nah. About once a year, you can spot a rare firenado in the US. Fire tornadoes start when a strong wind picks up heat from a fire. They're made of flame or ash. They're different from regular tornadoes because they don't start from cyclones. Firenadoes are about as tall as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Unlike firenadoes, fire rainbows don't cause any damage at all. They aren't about fire or water. Fire rainbows only happen when the sun is very high in the sky and its light is passing through ice clouds. A white rainbow is a rare illusion created by fog and water. Like a usual rainbow, it's formed when light is shining through droplets of water. It loses color because fog droplets are hundreds of times smaller than those of rain. A white rainbow is sometimes mistaken for moonbow. That one happens at nighttime and is illuminated by the moon. That's why it's not so bright. Kinda like me. Now, get this. Octopuses are visitors from outer space. Here's how this would have happened. Ice-kept eggs of octopuses stuck in spatial bodies crashed into Earth. Then these guys would have mixed together with a pre-existing set of genetic information available on our planet. And presto, octopuses were born. Well, it may be a long stretch to justify that the highly intelligent octopuses are extraterrestrial beings, but the idea is based on a theory that has been around since ancient Greece, something known as panspermia. Now, panspermia is a hypothesis that says life exists all around the universe, not only in planets. So, things such as space dust, asteroids, and even spacecraft have their share of life glued to them. And when they travel across the galaxy, life is disseminated. This strand of thought has been polemic, since it goes against the idea that all life originated right here on our planet. But as much as this new octopus theory might be refreshing, it doesn't contribute too substantially to the search for life on other planets. It's just too hypothetical. Now, octopuses are in fact incredibly old. The oldest known fossil belongs to an animal that lived almost 300 million years ago. FYI, this is before our dinosaur buddies roamed the Earth. Wait, there's more! Octopus arms have a mind of their own. That's because 2/3 of their neurons lie in their arms, not in their heads. This means that their arms can problem-solve how to open a shellfish, while their owner is worried about other stuff entirely. Talk about ninja-level multitasking. Oh, and like other animals, such as chimpanzees and dolphins, octopuses have proven to be good at maneuvering tools, like picking up old shells and using them as a temporary home. Now, of course, the most intelligent animals on our planet are humans, according to humans. But we don't seem to give pigs enough credit. Pigs are so smart they can play video games. No, not Minecraft. But in a recent academic study, scientists had 4 pigs play a joystick game. They had to manipulate the stick so that the moving ball would hit the wall and then they would get a treat. All 4 pigs did great in the test, which was surprising even to the scientists. Now, pigeons also aced an impressive test. They were trained to differentiate a Picasso painting from a Monet one, which they had no trouble learning. Then they were able to apply this knowledge, identifying works of art they had not previously seen, meaning they really understood the difference between each painter. Poor things are always seen as a nuisance. Now, if we placed kangaroos in an animal's most amazing ability contest, they'd win. It's mainly because they break the 4-legged rule. A special species of kangaroo, the red kangaroo, uses its tail to help propel it forward. Now, visually, it has 4 limbs, but in practice, it uses 5. They're biologically built to use their tail as a 5th limb, since it's packed with articulated vertebrae and thick muscles. Of course, it had to be an Australian animal. Okay, jokes aside, Australia is home to a variety of unique animals, like the most venomous snake in the world. This not-so-cute reptile is known as the inland taipan, and its venom is enough to take down 100 humans. And still, on the topic of dangerous animals, the island is also home to one of the world's most venomous spiders, the funnel web spider, which can be found not too far away from downtown Sydney. Yikes! The Little Mermaid may have shown us that life is good under the sea, but she didn't mention anything about the bizarre ways of the anglerfish. Anglerfish are those special types of fish that have a huge whip nose connected to the front part of their bodies. They look like they're forever holding a lantern in front of them, except that the little lantern they carry is a type of bioluminescence, and is far from romantic, as anglerfish use it to lure smaller fish in as their meals. It was back in 1999 that scientists discovered that these little guys spend most of their lives upside down. They had never seen anything like that. Hovering above the Pacific Ocean floor at a depth of around 16,400 feet, where light almost doesn't even reach, there they were. They do this because since they live so close to the seafloor, their built-in lantern illuminates the ground in search of food. They might be weird, but they're also pretty clever. Recently, scientists have discovered a species of animal that has neither a brain nor a head and is pretty smart. Meet the brittle star. This 5-armed creature is a bundle of nerves, and it has proved itself to be super clever. In a recent experiment, scientists would dim the light while they fed brittle stars their favorite treat, yummy shrimps. After 10 months of conditioning, these babies would creep out of hiding as soon as the scientists turned off the light in the room they were in. Surely they were expecting to enjoy a delicious meal. Now, we really shouldn't judge a brain by its size, or lack of brain in this case. There's something known as the orange cat behavior, and apparently it's not just a meme. So far, scientists have been able to understand that coat color is connected to a feline's gender. And since orange is an X chromosome, orange cats are usually males, like Garfield. The so-called orange cat behavior describes ginger cats as agents of chaos. Again, pretty much like Garfield. However, there haven't been any conclusive studies on whether coat color and cat behavior are truly linked. In terms of vision, mantis shrimps probably have the most psychedelic vision out of all animals. These funny-looking creatures have a whopping 16 varieties of photoreceptors, with 5 of them reserved for the ultraviolet or UV spectrum. Ultraviolet rays are really short wavelengths, which are invisible to humans. The thing science still doesn't understand is how exactly these mantis shrimp view the world around them. Sure, they can perceive a bunch of colors, but they can't necessarily distinguish all of these colors among themselves. It can be that they just see a lot of really vivid, really blurry colors, but we haven't figured out a way to check that out. Now, to say sloths are cute is an understatement. They may be one of the friendliest animals in the jungle, but there's more. If you look closely at their fur coat, you'll notice hints of green. These greeneries are actually tiny little algae that grow alongside sloths. They help sloths to camouflage better in the jungle, but they also nurture them. The little cracks inside a sloth's fur create the perfect environment for algae reproduction, and scientists have found species of algae that don't exist anywhere else in the world. They do get by with a little help from their friends. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey. Now meet this guy. Unlike what its name might suggest, the red panda is closer to a raccoon than it is to a giant panda. You'll find a lot of these cat-sized creatures in the Himalayan region, hopping from tree to tree and bundled together trying to keep warm in the harsh weather. They're gentle and friendly like their big panda cousins, and occasionally enjoy eating some bamboo sticks. And then there are bees. Compared to humans, bees' brains are the size of pinheads, yet they are capable of astounding things. Let's say a bee is running low on energy after a long search flight. This bee desperately needs a drop of honey in order to continue flying, but smartly enough, she doesn't need to go back to the hive to recharge. She can ask a fellow beehive mate for a drop of honey directly from this other bee's stomach and continue flying. This type of decentralized system allows them to build highly effective societies, one that bees don't need to push through the queues in front of the honey cells, for example. Hey, just kidding.
About a third of all grown-ups have a snake phobia, but if you decide to become an astronaut not to have to deal with them, it might not be a great idea. According to Story Musgrave, there are snakes in space. Musgrave is one of the most experienced astronauts in the world right now. He is the second astronaut who managed to go on 6 space flights and fly on all the space shuttles. With that much experience and time in space, he has to have 1 or 2 space horror stories in his career. Once on a space mission, he looked out of the window and saw something resembling a snake. Musgrave said it was 6 to 8 feet long and looked like a snake, but many people don't believe his story. They claim it was some trash floating in space or something that had detached from the spacecraft. But the astronaut went on another mission and saw the creature again. The first time he spotted it, it could be some detached piece from the spacecraft. But what are the chances of that happening twice? He gave many interviews in which he explained these crazy encounters. Let's hope those snakes stay in space and don't come crashing down on Earth. If they are real, of course. Snake rain would not be fun. As we all know, space is like a giant vacuum chamber with zero air, and sound can't travel there, making this story even more terrifying. To communicate, astronauts have a special system in their suits to exchange information. Young Li Wei shared his terrifying experience, and it's hard to believe it actually happened. You would be terrified if you were alone at home and someone started knocking on your door at night. Of course, if you weren't expecting anyone. Imagine the same scenario, but you're in space. You hear some knocking, you have nowhere to run, you're trapped in a metal can floating into nothingness. Young was sitting in his spacecraft, minding his own business, when he suddenly heard knocking coming from outside. How is it possible? Sound can't travel in space. The noise was unique. The astronaut described it as if someone had been knocking on an iron bucket with a wooden hammer. Li Wei looked outside, but to his surprise, there was nothing there. He investigated a bit more, but couldn't find the source of the sound. When Young returned to Earth, he was eager to tell scientists about what had happened, but he could not recreate the sound. To add fuel to the fire, his colleagues, who were on the same mission from 2005 to 2008, said they had also heard knocking similar to what Young had reported. This is still a mystery. Nobody knows what happened then. Maybe it was just spacecraft noise, like those your house randomly makes. We've already mentioned that sound can't travel in space, but that doesn't stop weird noises. The Apollo 10 mission was one of the most significant space missions ever. So, astronauts had to ensure everything was perfect before they went on a moon exploration journey. 3 people were on that mission: Thomas Stafford, module pilot John Young, and lunar module pilot Eugene Cernan. They had to do tons of gear tests for the upcoming Apollo 11 missions. The astronauts were circling the moon when they heard music coming from somewhere. It wasn't like Ed Sheeran's concert, it was more like constant loud screaming. Then, it was quiet whistling. They were terrified. Imagine being in space for the first time and hearing weird noises. The sounds lasted for a whole hour. The astronauts had never heard anything like that before. The sound was otherworldly and creepy. When they returned to Earth, they didn't know if they should tell someone about their experience because it was hard to believe. Michael Collins, an astronaut from the Apollo 11 mission, later shared that he had also heard this sound. But there is a kind of logical explanation for this. Engineers from NASA said that the sound that they had heard had been caused by the interference with the communication system. So you can relax and throw your tinfoil hat in the trash. But before you do that, Al Worden, an astronaut from the Apollo 15 mission, said that this explanation was unlikely, so we might never find out what really caused the sound. Leroy Chiao was the commander of the International Space Station in 2005. When it comes to space, he's seen a lot of things that can send chills down your spine. One encounter he and his crew had will live on in their head rent-free forever. Chow was sitting in the space station doing his job when he suddenly spotted light from the corner of his eye. He took a closer look, and it resembled an upside-down V, floating and glowing in space. Leroy later explained that he hadn't been scared by the object. Quite the opposite. He was extremely excited to see it, even though he had no idea what it was. His crew also saw the strange object. Chow was convinced he was visited by something not from Earth. His team could also vouch that indeed they saw something unexplainable. The information about this encounter is all over the internet, and many people are skeptical. It could have been anything. There are more than 10,000 satellites in space right now. It could have been a satellite floating in space. Another theory is that those were lights reflecting from a fishing boat on Earth. But who knows? There may be another logical explanation for this phenomenon waiting to be discovered. Horror stories don't stop there. This one is hard to believe, and it's up to you to figure out if it's true. Astronaut Alan Bean was the fourth individual to set foot on the moon's surface. When he was on the Apollo 12 mission, he claimed he saw a unique shape on the moon. It was shiny and shaped like a shoe. It's hard to know what he saw because he passed away in 2018. Chinese lunar rover Yutu 2 also discovered some shiny substance on the moon. Scientists say it was something gel-like. It could be a glaze that formed when something impacted the moon's surface, like a meteorite or something else. But in the future, we might find a better explanation for this strange find. This may sound wicked, but many countries send animals to space before humans follow them. Take Miss Baker, a squirrel monkey, Ham the chimp, and many more. Many of these animals returned to Earth safely and lived happily ever after, like Ham the chimp that lived for 26 years. But some weren't so lucky. Astronauts are still creeped out when they see animals floating in space. Imagine seeing something like that in a dark vacuum. No matter how tough you are, after that, you will be afraid of your own shadow. This may be sad, but it was an essential step in space exploration. The following horror story comes from space engineer Musa Manarov. This guy came across something that made scientists confused. He was shooting a video of space when he accidentally filmed some shiny object flying in the distance. The thing had a cylindrical shape, and Manarov thought it was something that had detached from the spacecraft. But he was unsure because it moved in a unique way. When you think of a creepy space story, the first thing that comes to your mind is some creature crawling on the spacecraft, or some weird object flying in space. But all those things are highly unlikely to happen. When somebody asked Chris Hadfield what the scariest thing about space was, he said it was asteroids. There are thousands of them in space, and the spacecraft is constantly getting hit by them. Chris said that he'd always heard sounds from asteroids hitting his spacecraft. He also mentioned that the spacecraft's solar panels were covered with holes. And you never know whether a giant asteroid will come and hit your spacecraft.
At first, it may seem like the sun is burning, but it's actually not true, because the burning of our star isn't chemical combustion, it's nuclear fusion. The sun can't run out of oxygen or stop burning because it doesn't use oxygen to burn. Regular carbon combustion requires oxygen. As soon as there's no oxygen, the process of burning stops. Now imagine a candle. If you cover it, it doesn't have access to oxygen anymore, and the process of burning stops. But in nuclear fusion, the nuclei of atoms are fused together to make new, bigger nuclei. Such changes cause atoms to become new elements. Nuclear fusion doesn't require oxygen or any other material altogether. You just need enough pressure or heat to squeeze the nuclei of atoms close enough for them to overcome their electrostatic repulsion and bond into one nucleus. In 2027, two teams of astronomers discovered a cloud of water floating in open space. It was the largest and farthest reservoir of water ever detected in the universe. It's a cloud of water vapor surrounding a huge black hole called a quasar, 12 billion light-years away from Earth. The environment around the quasar must be unique to somehow produce such giant masses of water. It was formed by energy waves colliding hydrogen and oxygen atoms together. The cloud contains 140 trillion times the entire volume of water on our planet. It could provide each person on our planet with a planet's worth of water 20,000 times over. Wow! Even cooler, astronomers believe this water cloud appeared just 1.6 billion years later than the universe itself. Scientists consider it another demonstration that water exists throughout the universe and was present already during its early days. At the same time, before this discovery, scientists had never found water vapor present so far back in the early universe. There is water in our home Milky Way galaxy, but most of it is frozen in ice. Not only water is floating out there in space, alcohol too. In 2009, scientists were examining a massive cloud of gas and dust in the center of our galaxy when they stumbled upon a surprise. There was ethyl formate within the cloud. This chemical is responsible for the sweet flavor of raspberries. They also found one more cool region. This one was brimming with ethyl alcohol, the same type found in many beverages. At the North Pole of Saturn, a mysterious storm is raging. It's ginormous, spanning an area larger than our planet and showcasing a beautiful but baffling hexagonal pattern. No one has understood yet why the storm has such a bizarre shape. After the hexagon was first discovered in 1987, it remained hidden in darkness up to the moment when sunlight exposed it again. Soon afterward, the Cassini spacecraft, designed to explore the Saturn system, provided a series of captivating images and even a video of the hexagonal storm. It turned out to be colossal in size. Its estimated depth is around 180 miles, and the eye of the storm is 50 times as large as the typical storm on Earth. The storm is also changing its color from blue to gold. Winds of hydrogen and ammonia surround the storm and move at more than 300 miles per hour. The storm has several centers. Some of them move clockwise, and others follow a counterclockwise direction. The largest vortex appears to be white, and it's twice larger than the standard hurricane on our planet. As for the hexagon itself, it's a jet stream made up of atmospheric gases. Experts refer to it as just a current of air and weather features. But there is one intriguing detail: a vortex sitting at a higher altitude than Saturn's clouds. It looks like a large towering structure. Saturn's auroras, triggered by the planet's magnetic field, are located atop of the hexagon, giving its appearance a mystical vibe. Astronomers have found a giant, likely active volcano near Mars's equator. It was literally hiding in plain sight. It's ancient and deeply eroded, but seems to be still functioning. There may even be remnants of a glacier ice near its base. That's why this discovery might indicate a promising new location to search for life, as well as a potential destination for future human and robotic exploration. The structure is still awaiting its official name. At the moment, it's referred to as the Noctis volcano. It reaches a height of 29,600 feet and spans an impressive 280 miles across. Such a giant size indicates that the volcano has been active for a very long time. In its southeastern part, there's a thin, recent volcanic deposit, and beneath, glacier ice might still be present. At a distance of 700 million light-years away from Earth, there's a gaping hole, a blank void with no galaxies, stars, planets, or asteroids, literally nothing. The void is a roughly spherical region about 330 million light-years across. Our home Milky Way galaxy could fit there billions of times over. That's the mysterious Bootes void. It lies in the constellation of Bootes, the herdsman driving the plow around the North Pole. At first, this void had the name of the Great Nothing, but later it was given its current name. Now, we know that galaxies look like a giant web. Most of them are parts of long structures called filaments. Those wind through the cosmos, and when they meet, they form regions with a high concentration of galaxies. These regions are what we know as galaxy clusters, but between these clusters and threads, there are enormous empty voids that hardly contain any galaxies. Such voids actually make up almost 80% of the observable universe, and most of them are huge, from 30 to 300 million light-years wide. The Bootes void is one of the most massive ones. It has even earned the title of supervoid. Astronomers think it might be the result of a few smaller voids merging together. There is a diamond planet out there that orbits a star in the constellation of Cancer, completing one full rotation in a mere 18 Earth hours. The planet's scientific name is 55 Cancri E. The radius of this faraway world is twice as large as Earth's, and its mass is 8 times greater. The planet is scorching hot, the temperatures on the day side reaching almost 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But the coolest thing about 55 Cancri E is that, according to some specialists, at least a third of the planet's mass could be diamond. That's the equivalent of around 3 masses of our home planet. Sounds like big money floating out there in space. How about we calculate how much this planet could be worth? Wait, someone has already done it, and the number is astronomical, pun intended, of course. It's 26.9 nonillion. And if you're confused by this number as I am, that's 26.9 followed by 30 zeros. Now, for comparison, one of the most expensive diamonds on Earth ever is the Cullion. It costs a whopping $2 billion, and its original weight was a mind-boggling 3,106.75 carats. It was, and still is, the largest raw gem diamond ever found. Later it was cut into many small diamonds. The largest of them is Cullion 1, which also goes by the name of Star of Africa. It has a carat weight of about 530, but imagine how much bigger and more expansive the diamond planet is. Nebulas are gigantic clouds of gas and dust, and some of them can have really unusual shapes, as if they were made this way on purpose. With time, gravity starts to pull these clumps of dust and gas together. They grow larger and larger, and their gravity gets more powerful. One day, this mass becomes so big that it collapses under its own gravity and forms new stars. Among some of the most beautiful nebulas out there, we must mention the Butterfly Nebula. Its wingspan is more than 3 light-years. And the structure inside the nebula is one of the most complicated ever observed. The central star, a white dwarf, is heated to an incredible 450,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It means it formed from a giant gargantuan star, likely more than 5 times the size of our Sun. The white dwarf is surrounded by a thick disk of dust and gas at the equator. It's what probably makes the whole structure look like an hourglass or a butterfly. The Ring Nebula looks like a giant cloud of dust and gas surrounding an old, almost extinguished star. At first sight, it does look like a ring, but astronomers say the nebula isn't a bagel, it's a jelly-filled donut. They must be hungry. The deep space colorful object, more than 2,000 light-years away from Earth, is actually a ring that wraps around a blue ball-shaped structure. Each end of the structure sticks out of the ring's opposite sides. The pillars of creation look like something out of this world. See for yourself. They're located 7,000 light-years away from Earth in the Eagle Nebula. That's a young cluster of stars just 5.5 million years old. On a space scale, they're just babies. Once, the Hubble Space Telescope managed to take an image of several dark silhouettes near the nebula's center. And now you can see them with your own eyes. Those are the so-called pillars of creation, an active star-forming region. Look at this famous image. The blue colors represent oxygen, red is sulfur, and green means the presence of both hydrogen and nitrogen. The pillars are also bathed in the ultraviolet light coming from a nearby cluster of young stars. Unfortunately, the winds from those stars are slowly but steadily eroding the magnificent towers of gas and dust. Far out in space, a ghostly super-ancient galaxy is floating all alone. It shines with a faint glimmer of starlight and has hardly changed for billions of years. Astronomers have no idea why it's there or how it formed. Meet DGSATI, a living fossil galaxy. It's as big as the Milky Way, but is nearly invisible because its stars are spread out incredibly thinly. But what makes the galaxy so unique is that it's sitting all alone, unlike other galaxies of this kind, which are usually found in clusters. It might mean that GGSATI was formed in a different era, probably a mere 1 billion years after the Big Bang. If it's true, the galaxy is a real living fossil. Astronomers have discovered the most massive stellar black hole ever spotted in our home Milky Way galaxy. This newly found space monster is 33 times bigger than the Sun and sits 2,000 light-years away from us. Until recently, the largest stellar black hole found residing in our galaxy has been around 20 times as big as our star in terms of mass. As for the average stellar mass black hole, it's usually about 10 times as hefty as the Sun. Scientists spotted the giant black hole after a star started to wobble while orbiting in that area. The black hole got the name of Gaia BH3. The proximity of this space object to Earth makes it the second closest to our planet black hole ever discovered. The nearest one is called Gaia BH1. Makes sense. It's hanging out around 1,560 light-years away from us. This uncomfortably close neighbor has a mass of around 9.6 times that of the Sun. That means it's way smaller than the newly found black hole. Gaia BH3 is located in the Aquila constellation. From Earth, it seems to have the shape of an eagle. Interestingly, astronomers didn't expect to find a high-mass black hole lurking so relatively close to Earth and remaining undetected for so long. Now look at this marvelous exoplanet. It resembles a giant eyeball hanging out there in space. But it isn't the coolest thing about it. This distant world, identified in 2017, is one of the most promising places for finding life outside our solar system. The exoplanet is called LHS 1140b, and it shows signs of having a global ocean capped in ice. It's that very iris, a huge region around 2,500 miles across, which is constantly gazing at its host star. The planet has a radius of about 1.73 times the radius of Earth, and is 5.6 times as massive as our home planet. The giant eyeball planet orbits much more closely to its star than Earth does. It needs just around 25 days to complete an entire orbit. If the star were similar to our Sun, such a distance would definitely be too close for life to appear on the planet. But instead, it's a cool and dim red dwarf. That's why the exoplanet lies in the habitable zone of its star, where it's not so cold that all surface water would freeze, and not so close that this water would steam away. At the moment, LHS 1140b looks like the most promising candidate for hosting life in our planetary neighborhood. Solar flares are extremely powerful bursts of electromagnetic radiation that can last from minutes to hours. They occur when there's some magnetic disturbance in the Sun. Then, magnetic field lines in the atmosphere of our star get tangled and snap. This releases giant amounts of excess energy, including ultraviolet radiation and intense X-rays. These twisted lines appear in sunspots. Those are darker and cooler regions on the surface of the Sun. They form when magnetic fields that used to hide deep within our star rise up to the surface. As for coronal mass ejections, or CMEs, which are launched by solar flares, they're sent outward into space. They hit planets, satellites, and basically any objects in their path. Those that come across Earth trigger geomagnetic storms, which in most cases result not only in beautiful auroras, but also in power grid failures and satellite malfunctions. All these extreme solar phenomena, CMEs, sunspots, and solar flares, get much more intense during the peak of the Sun's 11-year-long activity cycle. It's known as solar maximum. Right before this event, the Sun steps up its activity. It starts to spit out giant blobs of fiery plasma, emits powerful streams of radiation, and grows planet-sized spots. At first, experts were sure that the current solar cycle would reach its peak in 2025. But judging by recent numerous sunspots, intense solar storms, and some other rare solar phenomena, solar maximum is likely to arrive sooner than that. This planet is as light as a piece of fluff stuck to your jacket. In the scientific world, its name is WASP 193b, but we'll call it the Cotton Candy Planet. It's located around 1,200 light-years from us. We'll never see it with our own eyes, but scientists say the Cotton Candy Planet is pretty much Jupiter's bigger, bouncier cousin. It has an extremely low density. Combined with other factors, like its high temperature and the infrared brightness of its host star, it makes it special. Interestingly, the planet's radius is just 1.46 times the radius of Jupiter, but its mass is a mere 0.139 times of our gas giant. May I have a close-up here, please? Thank you. See how fluffy it is? It would be absolutely impossible to stand on its surface should you ever reach this distant world. It's not often that you can meet something like WASP 193b at a planetary party. Such planets are rare. Their fluffiness might be caused by their planet stars. Those heat them, puffing them up like a marshmallow that's seen too much campfire action. The planet's super low density makes it a real anomaly among those 5,000 plus exoplanets we have already discovered. So, dark matter is a mysterious substance that makes up about 85% of the total matter in the universe, yet we can't see it or touch it. The regular matter that we're used to forms stars, planets, and everything around us. But dark matter doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect light, which is why we can't even see it. We don't even know if it actually exists. The reason why we believe in dark matter is because it leaves gravitational effects on galaxies and other cosmic objects. For example, spiral galaxies spin in a way that doesn't match the law of physics we know. According to our current knowledge, the outer edges of these galaxies should slow down, but they don't. They either keep the same speed or even speed up. It also seems to be acting like an invisible glue that holds galaxies together. If dark matter didn't add some invisible gravitational mass, the galaxies would literally break apart, not being able to hold stars together. But even though it's fundamentally important for our world, we still don't know exactly what dark matter is made of. This has been going on for years. Some experiments saw hints of it, but no one's been able to prove it beyond a doubt. Maybe the future circular collider will be able to find it. There's a mysterious force in space that seems to be pulling our entire galaxy, along with many others, toward it. This force is known as the Great Attractor, wink wink. It's a crazy massive region in space, about 10 million billion times the mass of our Sun, with a super powerful gravitational pull. Scientists think it might be a super cluster of galaxies, but they're not sure. The problem is, we can't see it directly because it's hidden behind the Milky Way, while the Milky Way itself, horrifyingly, is moving toward it at a speed of about 370 miles per hour. Now, just like with dark matter, we only know it's there because of how it affects the movement of galaxies around it. These galaxies are being pulled toward this region, even though, since the universe is expanding, they should be moving away from each other. What's even weirder is that this great attractor might itself be moving towards something even bigger, the Shapley supercluster. It's the largest concentration of galaxies in our nearby universe. In 2017, astronomers discovered a strange object called Oumuamua. This was the first known visitor from another star system. The thing was quite small, from about 330 feet to about 0.6 miles long. It was also long and thin, had a reddish color, and moved in a very unusual way. As it passed by the Sun, it unexpectedly sped up, and then left our solar system just like that. Tons of theories started sparking up. It was too weird looking for an asteroid. Scientists thought it might be a comet, but it didn't have the usual traits of one, like a tail of gas and dust. Eventually, some scientists even started to suggest the wildest theories, like it might be an extraterrestrial probe. People have been making a huge fuss about Oumuamua ever since. But after a while, it turned out it was just a natural object with unique properties. It was probably a fragment from a distant star system, like a piece of a disintegrated comet or even a chunk of a planet. But Oumuamua caught everyone's attention so much that in 2022, astronomers even proposed to send a spacecraft to catch up with it. This mission could take about 26 years. Hey, stay tuned. Now, as for extraterrestrial creatures, where is everyone? There's this thing called the rare Earth hypothesis that suggests that life as we know it is actually super rare in space. In the 70s and 80s, scientists argued that Earth is just an ordinary planet in an ordinary solar system. If we look at it this way, life should be widespread across the universe. It seems unreasonable to think that with trillions of planets out there, there will be no planet like ours anywhere. But then, a geologist, Peter Ward, argued that the development of complex life like ours depends on a very rare combination of things. The history of the planet, with all of its astrophysical and geological conditions, should line up perfectly for complex life to develop. So, just think about it. Being in the right zone of the galaxy, on a good distance around a stable star, a rocky planet with water and the right temperature, emergence of molecules, monkeys deciding to walk, and so on. This would explain the Fermi paradox, which asks, if extraterrestrial life is common, why haven't we seen any signs of it? Well, the rare Earth hypothesis explains it. The universe might be full of plants, extraterrestrial critters, and fun animals. But would there be an intelligent species like humans? That's another story. As for humans being intelligent, that's another matter. Dark matter? And even if they do exist, we could be incredibly far away from each other. That would make communication or contact with other intelligent species very unlikely. Now, there's another similar theory called the Great Filter. This idea says that there might be a big obstacle somewhere along the path from microbes to advanced civilizations. It was the idea of the economist Robin Hanson. He also believed that maybe intelligent life, as we know it, isn't that common in the universe, although he assumed it's not because our planet was the result of tons of unique conditions, but because there must be some sort of filter that reduces the chance of life progressing to our point. Who knows where this filter is? It might be in the stage of early microbes, which means that we managed to get through it or somehow ahead in the future, which means we might go extinct like many other species before us. Well, maybe in the next stages, such as colonizing other planets and the galaxy, are much harder, if not impossible. Something unexpected might come up, potential catastrophes, resource exhaustion, or other challenges. Now, there's this thing called a pulsar. It's a weird type of star that sends out regular bursts of radio waves, like a flickering space lighthouse. You see, in space you often find a pulsar and a smaller companion star that rotates around it. But one day, scientists discovered this system, which was also surrounded by tons of some energetic material. They suddenly realized that these are probably the remains of another companion star, which was very big in size. But the pulsar was blasting out powerful radiation and particles, slowly consuming its companion. This is kind of like how a black widow spider eats its mate, hence the name. Since then, they've found other similar systems. They've grouped them all into one spider family. There are also redback pulsars, which destroy slightly larger companions, and huntsman pulsars, which have companions that are massive enough to resist being completely destroyed. Even though so many safety measures are taken, space is still an unpredictable place where we don't have as much power as we'd like to. Back in 1973, during a spacewalk on the Skylab space station, 2 astronauts were in a very risky situation. They were out in space fixing things, but they didn't have the same handy jetpacks like astronauts do today. They could only rely on safety tethers. Suddenly, the solar arrays they were working on moved unexpectedly and pushed them out of their position, almost sending them drifting off into space. Thankfully, the safety ropes did their job. Strong, resistant to heat, and attached to astronauts' waists, these tethers can hold a weight of about 881 pounds. This accident happened before SAFER came into use. It's easy to understand why accidents at work are way scarier up there than some regular 9-to-5 job on Earth. But that's why you have more training and special equipment to keep you safe. First, astronauts are always attached to the spacecraft with tethers, so they don't float away like a helium balloon. It may seem like a spacewalk is such a big deal that the ISS needs to stop when the astronauts are out there doing their thing, but it's not like that. If the ISS were ever to stop, it would fall straight down to our planet. So, once an astronaut is in a stable orbit, they stay in that orbit, unless some new force acts out. The first spacewalk wasn't as simple as those done later. It was performed in 1965, and it lasted 12 minutes. 2 men set out on a mission. One of them was supposed to float in space for a while taking pictures. But things went wrong. His spacesuit expanded too much, making it hard to move. He started to feel overheated, so he had to let some oxygen out of his suit, which was very risky. He could run out of air or get sick like a deep-sea diver. Getting back into the spacecraft was tough as well, but he somehow managed to do it. Then, more problems came. The spacecraft started spinning, oxygen levels rose dangerously, and there was a risk of an explosion. After a lot of struggle, they made it back to Earth, but landed in a random forest surrounded by wolves and bears during a snowstorm. It took a rescue party to find them. Not a very encouraging story to listen to while you're waiting to go out. But cheer up, things have improved since then. Hundreds of astronauts have taken spacewalks without any serious problems. So here you are, whizzing right along with the giant ISS. Your first spacewalk goes almost flawlessly, so you can enjoy the view a bit. It's hard to control the way you move, but tethers still do their job, so you can focus on your task. Until you realize they failed. How did they untie? You notice you're floating off in some random direction. There's nothing you can hold on to. Your body is weightless, and it has started to spin around. It's so frustrating when you can't take control of your movements. An astronaut named Scott Kelly described this unpleasant feeling in his book Endurance. He was turning around and upside down in the darkness and could see nothing but what was right there in front of his face. It was like a scuba diver floating in murky waters, totally disoriented, with no way of telling which direction was wrong and which one could be right. In space, you can't kick or flail to change your course. It might be fun floating inside a spacecraft with zero gravity, playing and fooling around, but seeing just the endless void filled with stars in the distance and knowing what could happen makes it frightening. And now you're getting closer to Earth's atmosphere. It might seem like the safest option because it makes you feel like you're going home, but in reality, you better hope you'll change direction. If your angle and speed are wrong, you might re-enter the planet's atmosphere and burn up. Not a good deal. NASA trains astronauts for such situations, so you know what's your next step: activating an emergency jetpack called SAFER. This tool is designed to help you stabilize and move in space. You don't even need the tethers. You can control the movements of your jetpack with a small joystick. Finally, all those hours of playing video games will pay off. These jetpacks became an inevitable part of the spacewalk package almost 30 years ago. So far, no astronaut has had to use one during a spacewalk. Whew! You're back on track, and you're moving away from Earth's atmosphere. You're getting closer to the ISS, flying manually. Oops! These jetpacks have one big flaw. They have a limited amount of fuel, and your SAFER has just run out of it. Okay, take a deep breath. One of the most important things every astronaut has to learn is to be prepared for literally anything. This strange radio signal wasn't found by a scientist on a serious mission. It was actually discovered by a college student just doing a regular project for school. Tyrone O'Doherty, an undergrad student at Curtin University in Australia, was sifting through old data of the southern sky. He was looking for any weird blinking radio signals. He finally stumbled upon one from 2018 that seemed to shoot radio waves towards Earth like a lighthouse beam. Excited about his find, Tyrone shared it with his mentor, radio astronomer Natasha Hurley-Walker. She dove into researching this signal, hoping for a breakthrough. But despite checking different frequency data, they hit a dead end. But then, Natasha spotted a pattern. The signal repeated every 18 minutes. This was huge. But just as they were gearing up to study it further, poof! The signal vanished after only 3 months, leaving them with nothing. Not giving up, Natasha and her team scanned the skies again, desperate for a clue. Months passed, but nothing turned up. They were ready to give up, and then suddenly, a new signal popped up. This one kept blinking for 5 minutes, then it disappeared. And then it came back exactly 22 minutes later. The main question was if that signal was related to an 18-minute one. To figure it out, Natasha went back to the old radio data from that area. As they dug deeper, they realized that yes, and these signals aren't anything new. They'd been beaming towards Earth for 35 years. Back in 1988, Indian and American telescopes had caught them, but they got buried under tons of other data. This was great news for space explorers because it meant they could now calculate how far away this mysterious object was. After doing the math, they figured out it was incredibly far, even on a space scale, 15,000 light-years from Earth. Now, the only thing left to uncover was what exactly this object was. Walker and his team started comparing it to all the known radio-emitting objects out there. Yet its source remains a mystery. The signals still pop up every 22 minutes on NASA screens, always ending with a frustrating match not found message. The scientists called it J183910. Some think that the signal might come from some extraterrestrial beings. Maybe it's the signal that SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, has been waiting for. This project has been working for over 50 years, trying to find any evidence of life beyond Earth. They also scan the skies for radio waves, laser pulses, and other mysterious signals. So maybe it's a way for extraterrestrial folk to communicate their location. Over billions of years, the surface of the Moon has been hit by asteroids and comets, causing bits and pieces to constantly break off from the impacts. Because of this, all the surface material is pretty loosely packed. So when there are quakes, slopes in the same area can become susceptible to landslides or new faults opening up. Future settlements located too close to these unstable slopes could put everyone living inside these lunar bases at risk. Moon dust adds another layer of complexity because without erosion or water to smooth it out, it can harden to the point of being as tough as glass. If we really want to understand how dangerous moonquakes might be for people living and working on the Moon in the future, space agencies still need to map out and get new seismic data, and not just from the South Pole, but from the entire satellite. In 2025, the Farside Seismic Sweep Mission, or FSS, plans to deploy two of the most high-precision seismometers ever built to the Schrödinger crater, which is located on the dark side of the Moon. Finding out what's happening on the ground there is crucial for understanding the complex lunar structure and its internal dynamics. Scientists are still trying to figure out whether the lack of recorded seismic activity on the far side of the Moon is due to current instruments not being capable of detecting it, or if it's due to some kind of interference from melted material in the mantle. Once they have this answer, it will be easier to fully understand the phenomenon of shallow moonquakes and assess their implications for future neighborhoods on our natural satellite. Now, you may have heard that Earth is also shrinking, but it's a different process. Basically, the Moon is getting smaller mainly because its core is cooling down naturally. The Earth's core is cooling too, but our planet got its crust with tectonic plates, unlike the Moon, which only has one plate. So the energy from Earth's core shifts those plates around or comes through volcanic eruptions. Earth is actually losing mass overall due to atmospheric loss. Our planet loses about 100 million pounds of mass per year, mostly from a leaky atmosphere. Earth's gravity isn't strong enough to retain the lightest particles, like hydrogen and helium, which escape into space. But don't worry, these numbers aren't cause for alarm. considering that our planet's atmosphere weighs about 5 quadrillion tons, a number I can't even imagine. So, in other words, it would take many, many, many times the current age of the universe for it to completely evaporate. We found a water cloud in space around a black hole. It's a gigantic water reservoir that's located about 12 billion light-years away from Earth. This must be the largest and farthest water reservoir ever detected in the universe. This one cloud contains an astonishing 140 trillion times more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. That's wet. The water surrounds a quasar, which is basically an incredibly energetic supermassive black hole. This quasar is about 20 billion times larger than the Sun and emits as much energy as 1,000 trillion suns. You do the math. As the black hole slowly consumes everything around it, it releases energy. This energy heats the surrounding gases and dust, causing the formation of water vapor. As a result, the black hole is surrounded by a huge water cloud and all the other gases and dust bath around it. This pair formed when the universe was only 1.6 billion years old, just a fraction of its current age. That means that the water isn't young at all and has been existing in galaxies for billions of years now. This quasar will only keep getting scarier and bigger. If it eats up all this gas and dust around, it could grow up to 6 times its current size, potentially becoming 120 billion times larger than the Sun. Think about that. Does the universe ring like a crystal glass? Maybe. But it doesn't mean that it literally rings and we just don't hear it. It just vibrates. Many of you know that the universe started with the Big Bang around 13.8 billion years ago. I wasn't around then, but we can assume. The whole enchilada was born from a super concentrated, hot, and dense tiny dot that contained everything. When it couldn't bear its pressure anymore, it made a huge blast and spewed around all the time, space, matter, and antimatter like a Pokeball. After being born, the universe moved at a breakneck speed. Imagine standing in the middle of nowhere, you blink, and suddenly you're surrounded by the universe. That's what it would feel like. It started growing and growing, and eventually, its speed got slowed down a bit by gravity. Gravity started pulling all the matter together, slowly helping new things like stars and galaxies to form. Okay, makes sense so far. The Big Bang gave the universe a big push, accelerating it. Logically, everything should eventually slow down and start moving at a constant speed, or even stop, right? Well, nope. In the late 90s, astronomers discovered something weird. They looked at some supernova around us, and for some reason, these supernovas were super far away, much farther than they were supposed to be. In other words, the expansion of the universe is not only continuing after all these years, but it's even accelerating. After years of study, they discovered the concept of dark energy, a mysterious force that makes up about 68% of the universe's total energy. This energy pushes it to expand even faster over time. And now, scientists have proposed a new discovery. Perhaps the universe's movements are a bit, well, wobbly. It seems like the universe's expansion hasn't been smooth and stable over the years. Instead, it has undergone periods of speeding up and slowing down multiple times. Astronomers counted about 7 cycles of this acceleration and deceleration over the history of our universe. This can be compared to the oscillation of a crystal glass. When you strike a crystal glass, it vibrates, oscillating at its natural frequency. It goes through fluctuations in which the frequency rises and falls. Over time, it calms down and fades away. Well, something like this is happening to our universe. You can imagine its speed also fluctuating like that, rising and falling, first super rapidly and then more calmly. As if it's not just different waves traveling through it, but our entire world is like one huge ringing wave. The discovery was actually made by accident. Astronomers were working on dark matter modeling. They plotted a new graph called the Hubble diagram, which shows how big the universe got over the years, measured in supernovas. Supernovas are like some lighthouses of our world, helping us mark things on a map. That's when they found these oscillations. But we still need to check all the data to make sure that this discovery is indeed true. Dark energy and dark matter play this weird game with the universe, where one is constantly trying to pull everything together, while the other one wants everything to expand. So far, dark energy vastly outweighs dark matter, whose weight makes up only 27% of the universe. Now, both of them are invisible to us, and not just invisible to our eyes like infrared, it's that we literally can't detect them in any way. We can only assume that they exist based on how they influence gravity, changing entire galaxies, and all the large-scale structures of the universe. We basically made them up because it was the only way to explain how our world works. Dark energy is uniformly distributed across space and time, and we're still not sure what exactly it is. Some theories say that it could be a property of space itself, quantum fluctuations, or even a new type of field or particle. But all we have for now is an invisible energy that pushes the universe to move very fast. If one day we learn more about it, this will help us predict the entire fate of our world. Depending on how exactly dark energy works, the universe may continue expanding and growing indefinitely. Or maybe one day, it will experience the Big Rip, where all matter will be completely torn apart. Okay, here's to hoping we're not all around for that. Meanwhile, dark matter, also invisible and yet to be proved, works the opposite way. It's not energy that accelerates things. Instead, it's more like a glue that tries to hold everything together. It's a type of matter we can't detect because it doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect light. We don't even know what particles make up this thing. We still can't catch them. At first, we thought it might be made up of regular heavy particles, like the one that makes up our world. But after years of research, they haven't found even a single one. So now they think maybe it's actually made up of ultralight particles, millions of times lighter than anything we know, and because of that, we can't even notice them properly. So now, astronomers try to detect not the particles themselves, but waves that they could leave as they move through space. But we believe that it exists, because if it didn't, our galaxies wouldn't hold together. Dark matter helps them form, grow, and rotate. So, about 85% of our world is made of something unknown. All of this is incredibly mysterious and needs a lot of research. But that's what we know now. Maybe in the future, we'll discover something that will completely change our perception of the universe. That's what happened to Albert Einstein. In the early 20th century, most scientists, including Einstein, believed that the universe doesn't actually move. They thought it was static, neither expanding nor contracting. That's because, to us, it feels like it doesn't really move. Back then, scientists didn't have powerful computers or telescopes that could detect all the little changes in the positions of stars and supernovas. When Einstein developed his famous general theory of relativity in 1915, his equations actually suggested that the universe should either be expanding or contracting. This didn't really make sense to him. To fix this calculation flaw, he decided to introduce a new term, the cosmological constant. It was like a repulsive force that counteracted the attractive force of gravity. Essentially, it meant that while gravity tries to push everything together, some force or energy helps to balance this out by pushing everything apart. Sounds familiar? Then, in the 1920s, astronomers Edwin Hubble and Georges Lemaitre found out that the universe isn't static, it actually expands. They noticed a slight reddish tint from the distant galaxies, and this tiny hint meant that other galaxies were moving away from us. After that, Einstein scratched out the cosmological constant. Interesting how he was later ashamed of this assumption, calling it his greatest blunder. He didn't even know that he was 100 years ahead of his time, accidentally discovering dark energy. Now the cosmological constant is back again, just in a new form. Something similar happened with dark matter. Scientists have already started noticing that something doesn't add up back in the early 20th century. They saw that galaxy clusters didn't have enough visible mass to hold them together, which means there must be some unseen mass that helps to make up for it. And that's when it got its name, the dark matter. This stayed unresolved and unproven for many years. And then it was finally discovered by Vera Rubin when she was observing galaxies and their movement. She realized that outward parts of galaxies move almost as fast as their central parts. This doesn't really make sense. The outer parts should be a bit slower. This became the first official proof of dark matter, which boosted its research. There are still many things left to be discovered, but maybe one day we'll understand what is this invisible part of our universe that makes it ring.
In April 2023, astronomers found something exciting: a runaway black hole. This thing is moving through the universe at an incredible speed, about 3.5 million miles per hour. It's 4.5 thousand times faster than the speed of sound. They found it accidentally. Researchers noticed that there was some weird straight line in Hubble images. After some digging, they realized there was a moving black hole. As it moves, it compresses the gas on its path, literally creating new stars along its journey. So it's leaving a beautiful, long trail of stars behind it. And when I say long, I mean it. Its tail is 200,000 light-years long, which is like the length of 2 Milky Ways. Turns out, one end of this star trail connects to a distant small galaxy. This is probably where the black hole came from. Most likely there were 2 supermassive black holes whirling around each other. And then another galaxy came along with its own supermassive black hole and ejected one of the original ones like a mean kid, which is why it's called Runaway. There might be a 9th planet with the very original name, Planet 9, in our solar system. If it exists, it's probably somewhere far beyond Pluto. Astronomers think so because some rocky objects near Neptune move in a weird way, as if they were influenced by the gravity of a large, unseen planet. Planet 9 might be a gas or ice giant 7 times the mass of Earth. One of the ideas is that it could have existed in our solar system, but then bumped into something huge and ended up with a crazy long orbit around our sun. If we actually discover it, it could change our understanding of the solar system. A new telescope is coming soon, equipped with the largest digital camera ever built, and it will start scanning the sky in 2025. Maybe it will finally spot this mysterious planet. Another awesome discovery was made in 2023. The James Webb Space Telescope found over 500 planet-like objects in the Orion Nebula. Some of them are roughly the mass of Jupiter, so they're literally called Jupiter mass binary objects, or jumbos. They just float out there with no stars, and they're not really stars or planets themselves. What's even crazier is that in about 42 pairs of them, the objects are orbiting each other, even though planets aren't supposed to do that. On top of that, such large objects shouldn't form and exist without a star at all. So now, astronomers are trying to explain this. Perhaps jumbos have formed in places where there was enough stuff for big planet-like objects, but not enough for stars? Or maybe all of them were ejected from their star systems for some reason. Who knows? But now we definitely need to study them. The black hole in the center of our galaxy, Sagittarius A star, used to be super weird. Luckily, it didn't run away like that other one, but it was completely crazy in the past. Astronomers found 2 supermassive structures called the Fermi bubbles and Rosetta bubbles. They spanned about half the width of our entire galaxy, and they've been towering over the Milky Way for over 2 million years now. And scientists think that it's our black hole that created them. It seems like when it was at its peak activity, it had a wild, energetic eruption that lasted about 100,000 years. This event probably left these bubbles. In 2023, the James Webb Space Telescope took a striking, super detailed image of the so-called Herbig-Haro objects. These objects are called Herbig-Haro 46/47. They're basically young stars surrounded by beautiful patches of nebulosity. You can see the stars being surrounded by a disk of material that feeds them as they grow for millions of years. They're located at about 1,470 light-years away, but they're actually not our main topic of discussion. What's much more interesting is this weird thing right below them, a space structure that looks like a question mark. What is this thing? No one knows for sure. It has an orange-red color, which hints that it might be super distant, far from our galaxy, maybe even billions of light years away. Some think that this strange question mark is probably the result of 2 or more galaxies merging together. One of them was a bit curved, so it's probably a distorted spiral galaxy. The curve might be the tails being stripped off as they spiraled towards each other. The other one was rounder and smaller, like a regular spherical one. The gravity games never fail to amaze us. Astronomers started searching for extraterrestrial megastructures. They think that if there's another intelligent civilization out there, they could have built something incredibly huge to power their technology. For example, like Dyson spheres. Hypothetical structures around stars that use the star's energy as fuel. Astronomers analyzed some historical telescope data that detects infrared signals. They spotted some weird signals that could hint at the presence of these structures. In total, there are 7 such candidates right now. All of them are coming from red dwarf stars, which are redder, smaller, and less massive than the Sun. Another research institute found 53 potential candidates. They're still not sure what exactly causes these signals, but it could be not Dyson spheres, but some huge debris. It looks like there are some mysterious structures in the center of our galaxy. In 2023, the James Webb Space Telescope has taken a detailed picture of the Sagittarius C region. It's right near the center of the Milky Way. This image showed a dense area where stars are forming. There were many young stars and dark clouds that blocked the light from the stars behind them. That's a very packed place, with about 500,000 stars of different ages, sizes, and colors. This place is very chaotic and extreme. Now, scientists are using it to study star formation. But the weird part is that they noticed something else: the large region of ionized hydrogen. It looks like cyan in the image. This area is about 25 light-years long, surrounding the lower side of dense cloud. And it looks like there are some needle-like structures. They seem to be located randomly, and astronomers have no idea what they are. So now they have to study this in more detail. Astronomers have found a super rare, massive galaxy. It's called JWST 7329, and it's absolutely ancient. Our entire universe is about 13.8 billion years old, but the stars in this galaxy seem to have formed around 13 billion years ago, so just around 800 million years after the Big Bang. Also, this venerable elder has 4 times more mass in stars than our Milky Way does today. This strange discovery challenges what we know about galaxy formation and the nature of dark matter. Everything we know tells us that galaxies shouldn't have formed so early. There shouldn't have been enough dark matter for that, but here we are. So, perhaps our models need some revision. There was an incredible astronomical event called AT 2021 LWX, which is also called Scary Barbie. It was an unbelievably bright burst of energy that happened on April 13, 2021. It's one of the most energetic space events ever observed. No galaxies or quasars were nearby, so what in the world happened? At first, astronomers thought that it was caused by a supermassive black hole pulling in a massive star. But after some studying, they think it's probably because a giant black hole had some crazy dinner. It probably ate a large amount of gas, possibly a giant molecular cloud. The titanic black hole in question is between 100 million and 1 billion times the mass of the Sun. This is one of the most massive known and active black holes. Astronomers found the oldest strand of the cosmic web ever seen. The cosmic web is what we call a huge structure of the universe that's made of interconnected filaments of galaxies and dark matter. They're like a framework for galaxies and other structures, playing a crucial role in their formation. The filament we're talking about is made up of 10 closely packed galaxies. It's unimaginably huge, stretching over 3 million light-years. And it looks like the newly discovered strand is very ancient. It occurred only 830 million years after the Big Bang. It's probably anchored by a luminous quasar. This discovery makes us question how exactly galaxies are formed and what exactly happened to our universe after the Big Bang.
Ruh-roh, there might be another universe, like a dark mirror image of ours, where time flows in reverse. This flipped-over world might also be the source of dark matter, the invisible substance that's all over our universe. There might also be many more universes out there, in which an exact copy of you woke up this morning, but it chose a white t-shirt instead of a red one, sending it on a completely different life path. But let's start with this elusive dark matter. It makes up most of the universe's mass, yet we're not sure what exactly it does or where it comes from. That's because it doesn't act like regular matter. We can't see it or feel it. We just know it's there because of how it seems to bend gravity. Even though regular matter and dark matter are very different, they seem to exist in a balance. Some scientists think this must be connected somehow. A new theory suggests that for every way regular matter moves, there's a mirror version of it in the world of dark matter, like a bridge connecting the two worlds. There's also a strange coincidence in regular matter where a neutron and a proton have almost the same weight. This allows them to stick together and make atoms stable, making everything that we can see with our eyes exist. If protons were a bit heavier, there would be no balance and atoms wouldn't form. In the dark mirror universe, maybe things happen differently. Maybe in there, the equivalent of a proton doesn't bind to other particles, leaving behind lonely neutrons, which could be the source of dark matter. This theory also suggests that dark matter might have its own chemistry, like dark atoms and a dark periodic table. For the longest time, scientists believed there was just one type of dark matter. Although these particles are similar in some ways, like being almost invisible, they may vary in their sizes, speeds, and how they affect regular matter. If this idea is right, it means there could have been interactions between our universe and the dark mirror universe in the past. Studying how elements formed in the early universe might give us clues about this. The idea of a flipped world has sparked curiosity and even some confusion in the scientific community in recent years. Astronomers use a theory called the Lambda CDM model to explain the composition and behavior of our universe. According to it, most of the universe is made of two things: dark energy and dark matter. Dark energy is like the pushing force that makes the universe expand faster. Dark matter is this invisible thread that pulls things together with its gravity, acting like a universal glue. Regular objects, like stars, planets, and comets, only make up a small part of the mix. The model also tells us about the Big Bang, and how everything started from a hot, crowded beginning, and how the universe has been growing and changing ever since. While this model seems to be correct in many ways, it doesn't explain all cosmic phenomena. If you were to draw this model on a piece of paper, it would look like a series of flat pancakes stacked on top of one another. Each one of the pancakes represents a rendition of the universe at a certain point in time. Yesterday's universe would stand below that of today, but it would be a slightly smaller pancake. By the end, you'll see that the universe's history looks like this giant upside-down cone, with its minuscule tip being the Big Bang. Beyond this point, we can't see any further away in time with the tools we have, so we don't know what's beyond. More so, we're still not even sure what happened immediately after the Big Bang. But if we simply apply the math, the universe might go beyond this historical tipping point, which could mean it could go in reverse, creating a similar mirrored cone where time would flow backwards, in our perspective at least. This alternative idea not only challenges our understanding of cosmic origins, but also raises questions about fundamental principles in physics. All the excitement around a mirrored universe also came from Anita, a scientific instrument stationed in Antarctica, and its discoveries. This device saw some weird high-energy particles seemingly bursting from beneath the Antarctic ice. The problem with these particles is that they didn't behave as the laws of physics dictate. Scientists think they have a type of cosmic rays. They travel from space through the Earth and back out again. But the particles we already know about shouldn't behave like that. That's because higher energy particles usually collide with something inside the Earth and don't come out the other side like these do. They seem to be doing things both forward and backward. For now, there's no concrete proof of a mirrored universe. These particles could simply be ones we haven't discovered before, and scientists need to study them closely to come up with a definitive answer as to why they're behaving like this. Kind of like 4-year-olds. But what if there isn't just one other universe, but many more? This multiverse concept comes from ideas like the inflation theory, which says that our world had this rapid expansion in its early stages. While inflation stopped in our neighborhood billions of years ago, it's likely that it continues in other regions of the multiverse, creating different universes with their own laws of physics and unique characteristics. Our universe is the only one that we know of that can support life. We have stable stars that can provide heat and warmth, for example, which is crucial for creatures to start moving around. We also have an abundance of elements like carbon and hydrogen, which we also need to exist. The multiverse hypothesis gives an explanation for why our universe exhibits such life-friendly conditions. It may explain that there are countless other universes out there, with varying conditions, making the existence of life in at least one of them less likely. One fascinating implication of the multiverse theory is the idea of doppelgangers, these exact copies of individuals existing in parallel universes. This notion suggests that within the vast expanse of the multiverse, there could be infinite scenarios where identical versions of ourselves are experiencing similar events at the same time. Before we begin our travels to different universes altogether, we might need to understand our own. There's this galaxy, for instance, far from us, that might have no dark matter at all. It's about 250 million light-years away and looks normal at first glance. But if we look closer, we can't seem to find any dark matter. If it turns out that there are more galaxies like this one, it could change our ideas about how galaxies are made. Dark matter is usually thought to be necessary for this process, acting like the glue that holds the whole thing together. It is true, however, that this particular galaxy is more faint and has fewer stars than usual. When it was first discovered in 2019, scientists thought it might not have dark matter because of how fast it was spinning. The speed at which a galaxy spins tells us how much stuff there is in it. By comparing this speed with what we can see, astronomers can figure out how much extra stuff, like dark matter, must be there. And in this unique galaxy, the math says there isn't any. Among all these theories, there's also one that says dark matter might not be real at all. This new study proposes that maybe we've been looking for something that doesn't even exist. They think that our understanding of gravity might not be good enough to explain why some galaxies behave oddly. So instead of dark matter causing these weird behaviors, they say it might just be that we don't fully understand how regular matter works. They base these findings on a theory called modified Newtonian dynamics. It suggests that gravity behaves differently at very large distances or very low speeds. So, Mars has several faces. No, really. Back in 1976, when the Viking 1 orbiter was checking out the red planet, it spotted something interesting, a big structure that looked like a human face. It was in the region called Cydonia. It soon became very popular. A bit later, we also discovered the so-called crown face in Libya Montes. Mars in general has a lot of strange structures on it. In 2022, we spotted a door-like structure there. NASA's Curiosity rover snapped some pictures of a rocky mound called East Cliffs on Mount Sharp. This mound has natural cracks in it, and one of them is about the size of a dog door, like something from an ancient Egyptian tomb. A lot of people hyped that story up. The image was shared widely on social media, making the crack look bigger than it really is. Some people think that it's hinting at extraterrestrial life. But after looking closely, NASA found out that it was just a narrow crack in the rocky terrain. These cracks and gaps are pretty normal in rocky areas, both on Earth and Mars. The crack formed naturally over time, maybe from wind erosion or Mars quakes. Mars is a gold mine of mysterious structures. Recently, we found some strange spiral shapes there. These are giant coils made of lava, and they look like big springs or loops. For years, we weren't sure whether Martian valleys were formed by lava or ice. These lava coils are shedding light on that mystery. Now, thanks to higher resolution images from NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, researchers have spotted 269 lava spirals that can't be explained by ice-related activities. What's fascinating is these lava coils are like the ones we see on Earth, like those formed by Hawaiian lava flows. These spirals are so well preserved that they were easily overlooked before. They range from 16 to almost 100 feet wide and are subtle, blending into the dusty Martian landscape. These coils can teach us a lot about Mars's composition, especially its crust and mantle. We still don't know much about those. But Mars isn't the only planet with strange structures on it. For example, Saturn, the gas giant of our solar system, has a fascinating feature at its north pole, a huge hexagon. This is a hexagon-shaped cloud pattern that's about 9,000 miles long, making it larger than the diameter of Earth. It's thought to be a jet stream made of gases moving very fast, at about 200 miles per hour. This hexagon was first spotted by the Voyager mission in the 80s, and later seen up close by the Cassini mission in 2006. The Cassini mission noticed a change in its color from blue to golden over time. There are different ideas about why Saturn has this thing. One theory suggests it forms because of the way winds move at different speeds near Saturn's poles. Similar shapes were created in lab experiments when liquids were rotated at different speeds. Another idea suggests that a slow spinning stream of air, along with Saturn's special weather patterns, might be responsible. In 2020, we found that when storms are surrounded by winds swirling in the opposite direction, they can create a steady hexagon shape. So far, this is the most likely explanation. Saturn also got lucky with the bizarre moons. One of them is called Lapidus. This moon has a weird feature, a huge ridge that wraps around its middle like a giant belt. This basically makes it look like a giant walnut. Where's my nutcracker? This ridge is incredibly tall by our standards, around 8 up to 12 miles high and stretching 124 miles wide. It covers more than 3/4 of the moon's surface and is considered the third largest mountain range in the entire solar system. Now, we don't have a clue about how this enormous ridge formed. It's unlike anything seen on other planets or moons. There's one idea, though. The ridge might be the remnants of a dead moon. Let's say billions of years ago, a colossal impact shattered chunks of material off Lapidus. These pieces circled around the moon, forming a mini-moon or sub-satellite. And over time, the gravitational pull of Lapidus tore this mini-moon apart, creating a ring of debris around it. As the debris from this ring fell back onto Lapidus, it built up the massive ridge we see today. They think this process happened quickly, maybe over centuries. Saturn's gravity didn't interfere because, luckily, Lapidus was quite far away from it. If Lapidus was closer to Saturn, its moon might have been pulled away. But we do need more simulations to see if this theory is true. Titan, another one of Saturn's moons, also has some weird stuff going on in its methane seas. Scientists have spotted these strange bright spots called magic islands that seem to pop up and disappear over time. We have no idea what they are. Titan's atmosphere is packed with complex organic molecules that clump together and fall to its surface like snow. These magic islands might be snow clumps that soak up methane and sink very slowly. But there's a problem. In water, molecules stick together, which is why stuff can float on top of it. But methane is different. It likes to grab onto other molecules, so it makes any solid thing sink immediately. Yet, these magic islands don't sink. There's a theory that these islands might be like sponges made of ice with lots of holes. When pieces of this holy ice come loose from the edge of the lake, they can float on tightened seas for a bit before going down under. There are also other ideas, like bubbles of nitrogen gas or waves caused by wind. We need more research to know for sure. Moons like to be weird. Just look at our own one. In 1971, we found a patch with missing soil on our moon, and it looks like a blue lake. They call this mysterious spot Ina. We first spotted it during the Apollo 15 mission in 1971. Later, the Apollo 17 mission took clearer pictures of it. This spot, shaped like a bluish D letter, is one of the weirdest things on the moon. The color comes from special rocks rich in titanium called basalts. These rocks cover Ina's floor and make it look blue. There are also bluish areas near the edges of the mounds inside Ina. Ina is unique and probably has a long history. It might have had volcanic activity, with mounds that are about 3.5 billion years old. It's similar to the surface age of the volcanic field that surrounds Ina. Now, our moon has its own face, just like those on Mars. There's an area near the moon's south pole that looks like a face, but it's just a bunch of craters and shadows that happen to make an image resembling a face when seen from far away. These craters have been there for billions of years and cover about 16% of the moon's surface. Some of these craters might even have water and ice inside of them. You might be wondering why there are so many faces in our solar system. Well, that's because our brains are wired to recognize faces, even when there aren't any. It's a phenomenon called pareidolia. Our brains try to make sense of shapes, so when we see something that looks a bit like a human, our brain turns it into one because it's familiar. Like when you see a shadow figure on a chair with clothes, or even on Mercury. Some people see shapes like Mickey Mouse. So don't worry, it's not extraterrestrial life. It's our brains that play tricks on us, making us see familiar shapes like faces even where they don't really exist. Now, in the 70s, we received a radio signal that lasted more than a minute, and to this day, no one knows what it was or where it was coming from. But now, a new theory has appeared. Could the mystery finally be solved? In 1977, at 11:16 p.m., a telescope in Ohio caught something very unusual in space. It was a super short radio signal, just 72 seconds long. The signal was so strong and weird that the scientist who found it wrote "Wow" in red ink next to it. That's why it's called the WOW signal. Now in space, hydrogen gas sometimes releases radio waves, a type of electromagnetic radiation. They emit at a specific frequency, which is like a unique signature for hydrogen gas. This helps us to find, identify, and study it. Thanks to this, we noticed that the WOW signal frequency came from the same place as this gas. But it's not like it helps much, because we still have no idea what emitted it. What's even stranger, the signal happened only once. Even though we tried really hard to hear it again, we never did. And without a repeat signal, it was impossible to tell what it was. It's hard for us to even get its precise location, because the signal was short-lived. After a certain distance, it's very hard to tell where different radio signals are coming from. And that's where the theory started. This particular frequency that the WOW signal was on is special. It's not crowded with a lot of other signals. It's like finding a quiet spot in a noisy room. Because there's not much interference or noise, so if you send a signal on this frequency really far, it won't get lost or distorted. And that's curious, because it means that there might be a perfect place to send messages if we want to communicate with any extraterrestrial creatures out there. So, could it be that they're trying to contact us? Well, it's a real scientific possibility. No one knows for sure what caused the WOW signal. But if it was from something extraterrestrial, they definitely communicate not like we do. The signal looked nothing like a deliberate message, and that's weird that it happened only once. If it was little green people trying to contact us, it would be weird for them to only try once. But just in case, in 2012, on the 35th anniversary of the WOW signal, we decided to send out a bunch of messages toward certain stars. We used a special code to make sure any extraterrestrial creatures who got the messages would know they were from intelligent beings like us. Well, mostly intelligent. We even used a lot of power to make sure the messages could travel really far. Scientists have come up with lots of ideas about where the WOW signal might have come from, but none of them are widely agreed upon. We know for sure that it didn't come from anything on Earth. Earth noise can interfere sometimes, but this signal definitely came from outer space. There was also a theory that the signal might have bounced off some space junk and come back to Earth. But later, we realized that the requirements for that to happen were very unlikely. One potential idea is that the signal might have been caused by twinkling in space, like how stars twinkle in the sky. But even if that's true, it doesn't rule out the possibility that the signal was made by something artificial. Another idea is that it could have come from something spinning, like a lighthouse. Or maybe it was a signal that changed its frequency over time. Or it was just a one-time burst. It's been 50 years since a strange radio signal was caught. But recently, a new idea about its origin sparked up. Now imagine a comet streaking through space, leaving a trail of gas behind it, like a tail. This gas could be key to understanding the mysterious radio signal that caught astronomers' attention all those years ago. One of the astronomers looked at the WOW signal and thought it might be connected to a comet called 266P/Christensen. Yeah, that's a mouthful. This comet is about 1,800 light-years away. It wasn't known back in 1997 when the signal was first detected, but now it could explain the strange radio waves. Comets can emit radio waves as they get closer to the Sun. It's like the gases around them start buzzing with energy. This buzzing might be what the WOW signal was all about. To test this theory, we used a radio telescope to listen for radio waves from other comets. We found that some comets did indeed emit radio waves at the same frequency as the WOW signal. Then we pointed the telescopes at this particular comet as it passed through the same part of the sky where the WOW signal was detected. The comet's radio waves could match up with the signal, and while the comet wasn't exactly in the same spot as the signal, it was close enough to feel like we were onto something here. It also might have been caused by hydrogen clouds from two comets, the ones we mentioned and another one called P/2008Y2. Who picks these names? But not everyone is convinced by that idea. Some say that the theory about two comets causing the signal doesn't add up, because comets don't usually emit radio waves in the ways needed to explain the WOW signal. Also, the signal didn't repeat itself, and only happened once, which is weird if it's really a comet. They spread out their gases over a large area, so the signal would have lingered longer. The telescope used to detect the signal should have picked it up twice in a short time span, but it didn't happen that way. Also, the comet wouldn't have moved out of the telescope's view so quickly. This shows that we need to learn more about how and why comets emit these radio waves, especially at the same frequency as the WOW signal. There are also a lot of mysterious and interesting signals in space. Most of them come from natural events, like something called fast radio bursts. These bursts of energy are incredibly powerful and occur all over the sky, but their origins are still unclear. They last for only a fraction of a second. Maybe the telescope caught just a part of one of these bursts. There's also a strange signal we've been receiving since 2018. This one actually repeats every 22 minutes, but despite our efforts, we can't figure out where it's coming from. It started way back in 1988, and we've been investigating this mystery for 36 years now. At least here we know the distance of the mysterious object sending the signals, a distant 15,000 light-years away. Some speculate that these signals could be from extraterrestrial beings trying to communicate with us. However, we can't say for sure without solid evidence, so it remains speculative. Another explanation is a pulsar theory. Now, pulsars are neutron stars that emit beams of energy, similar to what we've been observing with the signals. However, the behavior of the signals doesn't perfectly align with what we know about pulsars. There's also the magnetar theory, suggesting that these signals could be coming from supercharged neutron stars called magnetars. Yet none of these theories fully explain the strange behavior of the signals. Maybe there's a new, undiscovered phenomenon in the universe. So even though comets are a possibility, there are still a lot of unanswered questions about the WOW signal. We don't know what caused it, and we may never know. We don't even know if it came from deep space or from somewhere inside the solar system. In any case, even if the WOW signal had a natural cause, it doesn't mean that extraterrestrial life doesn't exist. The study that talked about this also discussed a sun-like star that could be a great place to look for signs of technology from space. There are 14 more stars similar to our Sun in space, although we're not totally sure about their brightness. This opens up exciting possibilities for hunting down signs of advanced civilizations beyond Earth. Ooh. Spacesuits are made of many different materials, elements, and functioning mechanisms for them to protect you in the vacuum of space. Good thing. The freezing temperatures and lack of oxygen aren't suitable for any living being to float around without any sort of protection on, not to mention the burning sun rays and potential objects that can crash into you. The technical term for a spacesuit is extravehicular mobility units, and they're extremely durable and expensive to make, with each suit costing up to $10.4 million to make. Each spacesuit is custom-made, with each part and component created and manufactured by 80 different companies. The size of each piece may vary, so it can either fit in the palm of your hand or be as large as 30 inches. The suit has 18 separate items and 16 layers covering it. Well, in reality, there are 14, but if the 2 internal layers are added, it will be 16 in total, so there. Spacesuits have evolved over the decades to be the design it is today, a mini spaceship in human form. It's built to mimic the living conditions of Earth's atmosphere, so that the astronauts can't be exposed to space. It has a system to support oxygen and expel carbon dioxide. It's durable enough to protect the astronauts from solar radiation, harsh sunlight, and little micrometeoroids. The conditions inside our atmosphere can be extremely tough, which is why it has internal temperature control for the bodies and a pressurized enclosure. The temperatures outside the suit can be as hot as 250 degrees Fahrenheit, ouch, to minus 250 degrees. Brrr. It's designed to support life for anyone outside our atmosphere. The main piece of the suit is a cooling garment made out of nylon, stretchy spandex fibers, and liquid tubes. It's delicately designed to fit around 300 feet of tubes woven tightly together in clothing that occupies the whole body, except the head, feet, and hands. It uses chilled water to flow through the many tubes near the skin to regulate the body temperature and cool it down while spacewalking. Think of it like a fan in a laptop that's made to cool it down when it overheats. The whole garment is attached to the life support system. Now, the life support system is one of the most important pieces of the suit and requires meticulous effort to put together. Everything in this compartment is important to keep the astronaut alive in space. Any miscalculation can be devastating and even life-threatening. Ooh. It houses the pressurized oxygen tanks when they're filled and sealed tight. The oxygen tank can provide up to 7 hours of fresh air to breathe. There's also a secondary tank that adds around 30 minutes of breathing time. Astronauts can't afford to waste oxygen all the time while wearing the suit, so it's important that they strategically allocate those breaths. There's also the carbon dioxide removal device, which includes a filter canister made of lithium hydroxide that's also attached to a tube. That way, there won't be any toxic carbon dioxide circulating inside of the headpiece, and it will always purify the air inside. Next to it is a ventilation fan to cool the astronaut when moving. Wearing a heavy suit isn't easy and requires a lot of physical effort to move. Even though gravity is weaker up there, you still have to move your arms and legs, which can be tiresome over time. There's also a source of electrical power and a two-way radio to communicate with the base. And just in case something happens, a warning system is installed to warn the astronaut of failures in the system. Uh-oh. Finally, there's the water cooling equipment to keep the body cool and regulated. After the life support system is put together, it's attached to the hard upper torso part. The helmet on spacesuits, built for spacewalks, serves as a pressure bubble and is made of strong plastic to keep the pressure of the suit contained. There's a neck ring to keep it airlocked in place and a ventilation system to provide oxygen to the astronaut. And there's also a connection to a backup oxygen tank, just in case. While the astronauts are working in space, they might crave a little bit of water or something. Good thing there's a built-in straw for them to drink from. And also, while working in open space, there's that annoying sun that shines into your eyes. A visor is installed to protect the astronaut from the sun that's made of a gold coating. And what's a spacesuit helmet without a camera to record everything? Since the two-way radio is connected to the life support system, the headphones and microphone are placed in the chin strap where the astronaut can communicate with the base. Space can be dark at times, most of the time. So there's an inbuilt light bar used when operating on close-up objects. Continuing our space fashion show gala, over at the lower torso unit, we have the pants and boots area. There's also a knee to ankle and waist connection, comprising of a pressure bladder and a specially coated nylon. Most of it is made out of different elements and materials to keep it usable and durable in space missions, as well as providing stylish evening wear for that astronaut who goes out at night. You can adjust the size of the rings of the thigh and leg sections whenever you want. This is good when the astronaut is walking and needs to feel relaxed at certain times. The astronaut also wears thermal socks under the hiking-style boots, which have a heat retention system built in to keep those tootsies warm and cozy. The upper torso is hard yet lightweight. It's made out of metal and fiberglass, connecting the inside of the suit to the life support system. It resembles a t-shirt but attaches to the arm assembly, which stretches to the arms up over the wrist. There's also a special connection to the helmet ring piece. Over here, you can find water reservoir tanks, oxygen cans, and much other technical stuff needed for outer space. The newer spacesuits have a hatch in the back for the astronauts to climb in and enter the suit. How stylish! A control module in the chest area allows the astronaut to check up on the external conditions and monitor the fluids and electricity. The gloves are sturdy enough to protect the astronauts when touching and picking up objects while working outside the space station. They're built so well that they can move each finger with ease. They're the part of the body that gets cold fast in space, so the gloves have a heater system to keep them warm. The process of creating a spacesuit requires so many steps and details, so it's not like sewing together a sweater. It starts with a design integration and then modeling. That way, they can see what it looks like without gathering the materials to build it. And once the design is confirmed, they begin gathering all the materials, which can take some time. And when everything is gathered, they begin the fabrication and building, which can also take time. A total of 7 different parts will be created and shipped to NASA for assembly. When an astronaut goes outside the International Space Station, they must have a safety strap attached to them that connects to the station. That way, they won't float away while doing some maintenance work. The longest spacewalk lasted a total of 8 hours and 56 minutes, and the suits have come a long way. During the Apollo 11 mission, Neil Armstrong couldn't walk on the moon properly, even though, technically, he was the first to walk on the moon. He actually did some bunny hops. But with the newer innovations and technologies, astronauts can walk and turn their hips in space. NASA plans on going back to the moon by 2024 and is preparing 2 new spacesuits with better technology and dexterity. It's called the Z-Move, and it's based on the current design of what astronauts wear on the International Space Station. But the new designs and features will allow humans to live and work on the moon. A demonstration showed how flexible it is compared to the previous ones. You can twist and bend at the waist. The legwear section is better for walking on the moon's surface. Minor changes include no zippers or cables to keep out the dust. Now imagine a place where a single day lasts longer than a whole year. On Venus, a day, meaning one full spin on its axis, is as long as 243 Earth days. And what's even weirder, despite the fact that Venus is experiencing a never-ending day, it has a shorter year than Earth. While Earth takes about 365 days to complete one orbit around the Sun, Venus does it in just 225 days. So, somehow, for Venus, a day is more epic than a whole year. Venus is a strange planet in general. It's called Earth's twin because of how alike we are, although it's a bit smaller than Earth. But there are some drastic differences too. For example, it spins in the opposite direction, which means the sun there rises in the west and sets in the east. And Venus isn't the only one who dances to its own rhythm. Uranus does that too. And finally, Venus is quite crazy in terms of its atmosphere. When you stand on Earth, you don't really feel the weight of the air around you. Well, on Venus, that feeling would be like having an elephant sitting on your shoulders. Venus has 90 times the atmospheric pressure of Earth. The atmosphere there is a thick layer of toxic gases. For example, carbon dioxide that's released by all the volcanoes. It presses down with incredible force. This results in very hot temperatures. No wonder it'll take a long time before we'll be able to stand on this planet. Meanwhile, Mercury, the closest planet to the Sun, has an even more speedy orbit than Venus. It completes a full journey around the Sun in just about 88 Earth days. However, it has a slow spin on its axis, which means that one day on Mercury takes about 176 Earth days, basically half a year. Just like with Venus, a day there takes much longer than a year. Since it's closest to the Sun, no wonder Mercury experiences some super extreme temperature swings. Daytime temperatures can soar up to a scorching 800 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. But wait for the sunset. At night, it drops to freezing minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit. Ooh! That's because Mercury doesn't have a thick atmosphere like we do, so the heat doesn't distribute across the planet evenly. If one side is in the dark, it'll be super cold, and the other side will be scorching hot, just like if you let a regular big rock lie down under the sun for a while. In fact, it's so cold that there might even be some ice on it. Look at the planet's north polar region, especially those sunlit yellow spots inside craters. These are indications of water ice. Turns out water is much more common in space than we thought. Mars is often dubbed the Red Planet. It earns this nickname from the abundance of iron oxide, or rust, covering its surface. The iron-rich minerals create a rusty red hue that paints the Martian landscape. But it turns out Mars isn't just red. If you were standing on Mars, you'd witness desert-like butterscotch terrain with caramel and golden glows, some brown, and even a glimpse of a slight greenish hue. Mars also has the biggest mountain in the entire solar system, Olympus Mons, standing at a staggering height of about 13.6 miles tall. It's even taller than Mount Everest. It was formed by the volcanic eruption yielding low-viscosity lava, creating a shield-like structure. Since Mars is covered in sand, it's also famous for its crazy dust storms. But it turns out they're even more insane than we thought. These storms can last for months. While they might present challenges for future human missions, they also contribute to the planet's mesmerizing appearance when observed from afar. And not only storms, but even its own Mars quakes. Also known as seismic tremors, they were first detected by NASA in 2019. Unlike earthquakes that are often triggered by tectonic plate movements, Martian quakes are thought to result from the cooling and contracting of the planet's interior. It's interesting how similar, yet how different the planets are. Saturn's iconic rings might hold a secret link to Earth's ancient past. The rings are composed mainly of ice particles and debris and are estimated to be relatively young in space terms, perhaps just a few 100 million years old. Now, there are some theories that propose that they were born after some catastrophic event. For example, the collision of two large moons or the breakup of a comet. What's interesting is that this timeline coincides with the age of the dinosaurs' demise on Earth. Could there be a connection? Who knows? By the way, while Saturn takes the crown for its rings, it's not the only planet in our solar system sporting them. Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune all have their own set of rings, although they might not be as visible and cool as Saturn's. However, there's something where Saturn truly stands out: the magnificent hexagon at its north pole. It's a colossal six-sided figure. Each side of this incredible structure measures around 9,000 miles long, which is 1,200 miles longer than the Earth's diameter. Scientists aren't sure how it was formed or why. They think it might be due to varying wind speeds, or maybe it's shaped by a localized, slow, meandering jet stream. So far, it remains another of Saturn's mysteries. Much like Saturn's hexagon, Jupiter also has its own weird spot. It's called the Great Red Spot. This is a storm that's been raging for at least 350 years and is larger than Earth itself. Despite its name, the spot's coloration has varied over the years, ranging from brick red to pale salmon. Scientists continue to study this enduring storm, unlocking the mysteries of its persistence and ever-changing hues. Meteorologically, the Great Red Spot is a powerhouse. It generates enormous pressure in Jupiter's southern hemisphere. Meanwhile, Jupiter itself is a powerhouse when it comes to magnetic fields. Its magnetic influence is colossal. It extends far beyond the planet itself and creates one of the largest and strongest magnetic fields in our solar system. Because of that, Jupiter is a source of intense radiation and mesmerizing auroras. While Earth's northern lights are breathtaking, Jupiter has something to offer too. The magnetic field interacts with charged particles from Jupiter's moons and the solar wind. This creates visually striking auroras near its poles. But compared to Earth, the scale of these auroras is incredible, like nothing we've seen on our planet. But even having a cool big spot isn't a unique feature in our solar system. A stormy giant Neptune, the eighth and farthest planet from the Sun, also has its great dark spot. Just like Jupiter, it's a massive vortex in Neptune's atmosphere. But unlike its Jupiter counterpart, this spot tends to come and go because of Neptune's dynamic and ever-changing weather patterns. Neptune, together with Uranus, is known as an ice giant. And just like other giants, it boasts some of the most ferocious winds in our solar system. Its supersonic winds can get faster than 2,200 miles per hour. What a drama queen! But this explains its thick cloud formations. By the way, if you ever dreamed of a planet raining diamonds, you might want to visit this planet. Deep within Neptune's atmosphere, where pressures are extreme, scientists theorize that carbon atoms are compressed and form diamonds. And then, these diamonds might be raining down. What a unique touch to stormy weather. Neptune's moons got from their parent with the weird weather. For example, its largest moon, Triton, has a touch of cryovolcanism. Instead of spewing molten rock like Earth's volcanoes, Triton's cryovolcanoes erupt with a mix of water, ammonia, and nitrogen. Picture it as icy geysers shooting material into space. Seems like in our solar system alone, each planet has its own quirks and interesting qualities. Let's hope that we discover some more interesting things in outer space in the future.